The purpose of the Pmbok guide, we can talk about that here. So this introductory chapter does contain a lot of really important information, as I said. So just you want to make sure you've got a really solid grasp on these concepts so that you can build that good foundation for the remaining chapters. As I mentioned previously, familiarity with the entire Pmbok guide, 6th edition, is a requirement for the exam. The exam consists of 200 multiple choice questions, and I believe it is a timed exam about 4 hours. So, you know, there's any number of topics you could get questioned on, so that's why they ask, you know, that's why I recommend just being familiar with the entire guide, because that's going to really, you know, give you that solid foundation and be able to help you answer any questions that you might get asked on the exam. So the Pmbok guide, and just a quick note about Pmbok, it is the project management body of knowledge, and it is abbreviated PMBOK and pronounced Pmbok, typically, is how people refer to it. So you'll hear me call it that a lot. I typically say Pmbok guide. I see the question there from someone, the exam is not open book. I do know that they are changing it or potentially have changed it where you can take it online instead of in person. When I took it, I was able to have like a kind of a scratch pad, just a little bit of like a couple sheets of paper and a pencil. And so what I did was when I first kind of sat down at the desk, I did what they call a brain dump, where I just wrote down, you know, all of the formulas, all the different things that I felt like would help me as I was going through the exam. And then that way I didn't have to remember it as I was trying to read the questions. I could refer to it there. So you can do it that way. But it is, you know, it is definitely not open book. And then as far as memorizing the ITTOs, we'll get into some of that, and we'll kind of go over as I go through the tips and tricks as well. So we'll kind of come back to that question a little bit here, if that's all right. So for the Pmbok guide, this is going to be what are considered the best practices and the standards for the project management profession. There are some examples on page 1 that give you a little bit of the history of project management, if you want to, you know, refer to those. So it is important to understand the history of the Pmbok guide and how it became about, right? How it came about. So the definition of the Pmbok, according to PMI, it's a term that describes the knowledge within the profession of project management. The Pmbok includes proven traditional practices that are widely applied as innovative practices that are, as well as innovative practices that are emerging in the profession. And it is this body of knowledge does continuously evolve. So it identifies a subset of knowledge that is generally recognized as good practice. And the whole purpose is to determine the best or the most appropriate combination of those processes, inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, the ITTOs, and whatever life cycle might make sense when you're managing a project. And that's referred to as tailoring. And that when you apply that, or that's what they talk about here in the application of that knowledge as described in this guide. It is important to note as well that the Pmbok guide is not the same thing as a project management methodology. A project management methodology would be something like waterfall or agile. This is the foundation that is needed to practice project management.